Welcome to Conversations at the Effie, here at the Effie Arts Collective, situated on the unceded territory to Kamloops This. I am your host, Aaron Shufletoski, where we talk to interesting people in Kamloops. And today my guest is the editor of the Kamloops This week, Chris Foulds.
Thanks for having me.
Welcome. So you're the editor of Kamloops' only print newspaper.
The last remaining print newspaper in Kamloops. We're a dying breed, but also one of many, many news outlets on the web.
And you've been the editor at Kamloops This week for how long?
I came here in 2005, so I've been editor 18 years. And before that, I was reporter, assistant editor at newspapers in Abbotsford and the Fraser Valley since '92.
Was it the paper that brought you to
Yes,
Kamloops?
I was working for Black Press at the time. Black Press is a big newspaper chain in BC, Alberta, Hawaii, Oregon, Washington, and Ohio. Anyway, I was with Black Press for a number of years, and then Kelly Hall, the publisher here, he had an opening for an editor, and someone recommended my name, so he called me. We talked for a bit. We met in Richmond at some newspaper conference, and my family and I decided, hey, let's take a chance and move up here. So we moved up here in '05, blindly. Moved up one day. It was March of that year, '05, to find a house. We left Abbotsford at 5 in the morning with no snow tires. The Coke was closed because of the snow. So we went up the canyon, and we got here at 7 in the morning. We looked at 13 houses. Got back home at 1 in the morning. The babysitter was happy to see us, and we had bought a house, and then came up here a month later and started a job. So yeah, it was a whirlwind thing.
What was the first thing that you noticed about Kamloops that was a bit different than the Lower Mainland?
I was living in Abbotsford at the Abbotsford News, working there, and then traveling all through the Lower Mainland. So the first thing, we used to drive through Kamloops a lot to go to Edmonton. I went to college in Edmonton, and Kamloops is a very well-known drive-through town, and every time I drove through here, I'd stop at a gas station and I would say, God, who would ever live here? Because it looked like Afghanistan. It was all brown, it was all dry, it was all dusty, and it seemed 20 years behind the times all the time. And I could never imagine living here. I always thought it was Kelowna's ugly cousin, right? When I got here, that's when you get embedded in the community, you realize it's a pretty cool place, and it's not always so brown. It is always so dusty, but it's a cool place. I like it. The plan was to come here for 5 or 6 years, get seasoned as editor, move back to the Fraser Valley, Lower Mainland, get an editor's job with one of the papers down there. All my family lives down there, like my siblings and everything. But we just decided to stay, and I couldn't imagine leaving now.
What have you noticed has changed since 2005?
Well, when I came here, I think just in the city itself, the obvious observation would be it's everyone calls it by different names. We just call it a catch-all: social disorder on the streets, whether it's homelessness, whether it's crime, which are not the same thing all the time, if at all, mental health, addiction issues. Cost of living, which spirals into that. That is the biggest thing. The cost of housing has gone crazy. When we moved here, I bought my house in Aberdeen for $228,000. You can't even afford a one-room apartment for that now. Rentals are out of control. I have 2 kids in their 20s, and they're both going to college elsewhere, but I shudder to think if they can even afford, never mind buying a house, if they come back and want to rent a place, they can't do it unless they have roommates. That wasn't the case even 10 years ago. So the cost of living has increased, but that's the housing has increased, the rent has increased, the social disorder has increased, and I think Kamloops is not unique in that the middle class is being eroded, and we're becoming we're a world, a nation, a city of more haves and more have-nots, and the middle is becoming squeezed either way, which is not good. But the growth has been incredible, insane, incredible. I mean, I was just driving the other day by Winners, and I remember when I first moved here, that was a art nap and a little go-kart track and a whole bunch of bushes and ponds. and you can make a left turn across the street out of Save on Foods without even worrying about your life. Now, I would never do it. So it's grown so fast, so rapidly, which is interesting, and it's good for the economy and stuff. But with that comes inherent problems.
Right. What does the editor do at Kamloops This Week?
Oh, it's a whole bunch of stuff. You're in charge of a newsroom. I have 5 people, myself and 5 people in the newsroom, and you're in charge of trying to keep tabs on all the news as much as you can do in town. And the editor's job is to create story lists, assign the stories, talk to the reporters about the stories, keep on tabs of what's happening with the news. With the newspaper, I lay out most of the paper, except for the sports pages and a couple of news pages, write the headlines, edit them out, take the bullet if there's errors and typos and correct those. I post stuff online, and then you organize a whole bunch of stuff. We do a whole bunch of magazines and side publications that I'm in charge of organizing, and I do a lot of writing. I do a column every week. And I'll take up a bunch of stories if the reporters are busy, something I could quickly bang off, make a phone call. So you're basically a jack of all trades. You're doing as much as you can. You're overseeing things, and you're taking a lot of stuff from reporters if they're getting a little bit stressed out, so they can, like Jessica Wallace is a great reporter who does a lot of good deep dives. So I'll take maybe some stories that I would have assigned to her, so she can spend a week looking into like the TNRD scandal or another big story, the true investigation. So you basically try to keep up with the news. You try to keep up with the obvious news, but in the meantime, you try to carve out some time to do some really good, deeper dives, which I think is what I hope. That's what we're trying to do. That's what kind of we're known for. We cover out the surface stuff, but we like to do throughout the year, 3, 4, or 5 deeper, longer read investigations, or just deeper dives into stuff, which I think people like to read about.
Has news fundamentally changed, do you think, recently?
Yeah, it's changed greatly, and I think the news has changed greatly in that since I came here, since I started in '92, but since I came here in '05, social media is the great disruptor. The internet's the great disruptor. But social media has changed news in good ways and bad ways. In good ways, you can go onto Twitter or Facebook, and you can link to great stories, New York Times, The Atlantic, Washington Post. But you can also get links to just crap, fake news, misinformation, blogs that pose as news, and they'll say that it makes some claims that people then repeat, and it's not real, it's not sourced. There's no evidence to it, be it the pandemic or the election in the States or in Brazil. We saw Brazil. There's a whole bunch of stuff, fake stories about the Brazil attempted coup. The news has changed in that everything is so rapid, so fast, and that's the danger. You've heard of the slow food movement, right? Let's slow down. Let's have a 100-mile diet. Let's cook in the kitchen for a couple hours and talk and have a glass of wine. And let's eat slow and let's talk and enjoy ourselves. We need to do that with news. We need a slow news movement where we shouldn't have to, and we're guilty of this because it's a necessity of you got to feed the beast, which is a term to say you have to keep the website fresh. And that leads to clickbait headlines, which are baloney. That leads to really sparse and shallow stories going up because you got to get them up before the next guy, instead of waiting and saying, well, let's get the real story here and let's fill it out with some really good information. And we all, including us, are worried if we don't get it up right away, and it's not on Twitter right away, or on Facebook right away, or on our website right away, then people are going to read, this outlet or that outlet. But in reality, you can wait a day and get a really good story on there, and that's the one they're going to remember. But we're in such a frenetic pace, and I don't know what the solution is, but it's endemic across all media platforms. Everything's too fast, too rushed, and it leads to a lot of stories an inch thick rather than good ones, 10 inches deep, and it leads to errors, omissions, and not conclusive stories.
Media is, I think, derived from mediate between the government and the public.
The people.
Yes. That's the reason that the media exists.
Mm-hmm.
Is there a coincidence that it both seem to be distrusted equally?
Yeah. I don't know. I think in my time, when I went to high school in the 80s and then college in the 90s and working, it's gotten worse. And both media and the government have become more distrusted in various polls you see or you talk to people. But I think it's accelerated since social media became a big thing, because on social media it gives everybody's a publisher. And anybody can say anything without source, without fact checking, without sober second thought. It's out there. Even if it's complete bunk, some people will believe it. There's still people who believe that, you know, that Trump really is president and that whole Biden thing is an illusion. People believe the craziest things, and if you want to just get a bunch of followers who believe this, look at QAnon in the States. You know, one or two people created this crazy thing. It was probably a half-baked idea where they were probably just joking, and it turns into this crazy movement where people believe this stuff, this QAnon, and they believe this, and then the newspapers and the news media are trying to say this is just baloney. But the more they said that, the believers said, aha, that's proof that it's real because you guys are trying to shut it down. And then they met 2 years ago, a year and a half ago, they all met in Dallas because QAnon says that on this day Trump is going to appear there with John F. Kennedy, who, if you know, he's supposed to be dead, and Ronald Reagan. And they were going to meet on the grassy knoll, and they were going to proclaim Trump's the president and we're going to go forward. Hundreds, if not thousands of people showed up thinking that's going to happen. If they believe that, there's nothing we can do to convince them of reality. And there's a lot of people who believe weird stuff. And all you can do is say it's not true, but it doesn't matter how many times you say it, because there's a certain faction that will never believe you because you're part of the conspiracy. But it has gotten worse. And I think social media is the reason. We're a long way from when people wanted to be reporters after all the President's Men and the Watergate, and everyone wanted to be investigative journalism. And back then, you know, I was young then, but I'm pretty sure they were looked upon with favor. They were like, well, this is an honorable profession. And now it's like, it still is. It's a very honorable profession. People still rely and like what we do, but there are some people who still think we're part of some conspiracy for reasons that I don't know. I still haven't been explained to me. What are we getting out of it? Not money, I can assure you that. Not 9 to 5 hours. So what are we getting out of it? I have no idea.
So you're saying investigative reporting is very important.
Yeah, it is. It's extremely important.
And it has to be unbiased. You're
Yes.
trying to uncover the truth.
The truth, yes.
How does that conflict with your opinion pieces?
Well, and then you try to explain to people, they say, I read your article and it's so biased. I said, well, it's not an article, it's an opinion piece. So if I want to write an opinion, I'm the editor, so I don't normally do news stories. So I'm more free to like write a column where I'm critiquing or complimenting the mayor, the council, the MP. It's just my thoughts. I just like to write them. They get a good feedback. And I think I touch on the issues of the day pretty well. But our reporting is separate. So if Jessica Wallace is doing a story, with, an award-winning story for the TNRD spending controversy, then she's free to do that. I write about it because I work with her on it. I'll write about what I thought were roadblocks and how they're being opaque and stuff like that. But it doesn't affect her reporting of other things at the TNRD, at the regional district. There might be some good news, and she'll write it because she covers every or Michael, or any of the reporters covering City Hall. You have to just go in there objectively and know that one day you may have to criticize them, one day you might have to write a great story about how they're saving tons of money for the taxpayers because they've done this great thing with the water waste or whatever. So it's all part of, and I think those politicians and the staff, they know that. They're well versed in how media works. They know we're not out to get them. They know that we're out to get the truth. You know, it's the old adage, you comfort the afflicted and you afflict the comfortable. That's the job, is to make sure that there's a balance there. And I think we do that quite well.
So with all the news happening in Kamloops, if we're some sort of
Cosmic,
some weird news generator in town, why aren't we a daily newspaper?
Well, because the newspaper model is not sustainable with respect to advertising going online. And I don't know, I think we're down to 4 or 5 daily newspapers in BC. The Victoria Times Colonist publishes every day except for Sundays and Mondays, so they're a 5-day a week, I think. The Sun and Province are daily newspapers. I can't think of another daily newspaper. Trail is 4 times a week. Kelowna Courier, that's a daily newspaper. But there's not many. It's the economics have, the reality of the world has outgrown the economics of it. It's extraordinarily expensive to print to go to the printing press, to drive the trucks back, to give it to all the carriers, to put them on the, and people have access online. Our paper still works because I think it's a really good newspaper. We save a lot of stuff for the paper for that day. People can go read it online as well. A lot of people like to read it in the paper. A lot of people just like the tactile feel. I do. I go and buy the Globe and Mail and the Vancouver Sun every Saturday. I can read it online, but people like that, you know. And you read more that way. You online, you're not exposed to. It's like Blockbuster and Netflix. Blockbuster was great because it would expose you to movies you never might not watch because you see the box. Netflix, you're in a silo. Netflix and online news is like flying from New York to LA, just getting there. A newspaper and Blockbuster is like driving there. You get to experience and see things you might not other have seen and enjoy yourself for it. That's the difference. But the economics for newspapers, daily newspapers, are basically over. You just can't afford it anymore.
So with being able to publish on the web daily, what constitutes a digital daily?
Well, I think we're all digital dailies now, aren't we? Everyone's digital daily. We publish between 6 and 12 news stories every day. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending. Plus sports, plus community. I think we're the only one. We might not be the only, but we're one of the few that our layout online. I like it. It's like the newspaper. You have sections. Some other places they just put everything on there, so it just scrolls. But the more you put on, the stories get lost, and it becomes just a big noise factory. I think I like to go on there and see a story. See it there an hour later because I can read it, see the next story. That's how I like to read the news. There's some sites where they're putting stories on every 5 minutes and it's pushing it down. So you might miss an important story because it's off the list already and it's so busy, there's so much stuff on there. Advertising too is a big thing. The advertising in the print paper is our bread and butter. It helps keep a lot of people employed, pay their bills, raise their families. The advertising online is like a penny to the dollar still. It's hard to make money online with online advertising. Advertising online is very cheap, but it's not as effective, and that's a fact. It's not. That's why a lot of people still advertise in a paper, in a magazine. It has shelf life. More people are going to see it, and the results, I think, are there. But I don't think it's sustainable for an everyday product because of the enormous amount of energy and cost of producing a paper from the time you pay a reporter to write it, you pay someone to lay it out, you pay someone to print it, you pay someone to deliver it. It's very expensive. Yeah.
Hecklers are the worst thing for comedy, and it seems like the comment section for any kind of news news faction is full of hecklers.
Yeah.
But do you need that interaction with the people, or do you want that separation to say, here's the story?
No, what we've done though is I did this 3 or 4 years ago. We shut down our comments on our website because it just became a cesspool of hatred, insults, attacks. There was no intelligent conversation happening, or very, very, very little. And what we had a system where I had to pre-approve every comment because you don't want someone going in there and just saying something libelous or swearing. So I had on my phone linked to the website, to the commenting section, in the back end. But it became a 24/7 thing. I was on there, I go on there every couple hours from 5 in the morning till midnight. And I just make sure to see if there's new comments. And I would have to approve them or not approve them or edit them because someone might have a point, but then they're yelling at someone or something. It became just too much. It became a waste of energy, a waste of resources. It wasn't time well spent because most of the comments were just, and I got complaints from people saying that this comment is bad and this person is yelling at me. It became a kindergarten thing where they're using really, really vile language. And it did nothing to further the public discourse. It was horrible. So we canceled it. We said, no more. If you want to talk, go to the Facebook page because that's their thing. They can moderate. We moderate the Facebook page, but we don't have to be on it 24 hours a day because it's not our page. We're not liable for it. But we do go on there when people tell us, hey, there's a comment on Facebook I think is inappropriate. Because we monitor Facebook, but it's hard to keep up all day to do everything. So a few times a day I'll go on and check the comments, and some I'll delete, some I'll hide because they don't add anything. And I'm trying to encourage an intelligent debate. Disagree, but do it with wit, with creativity, with intelligence. Don't just start yelling at someone or saying vile things because I'll just kick you off there. So we're trying to keep it civil. It's hard. And we're trying to keep it to one, like with Facebook, we have control over the comments, and then people can also contact us and say, hey, I think this person's being slanderous, or I think this. We posted a faith column. We run a faith page in the paper every week. Some people say, why? I say it's one of the most popular pages. The one time I didn't run it, I got so many calls and emails. People like it. And if you don't like it, turn the page. You don't have to read it, right? I'm not a religious man. I'm not sure what I believe in, but it doesn't offend me. And it just makes me, okay, maybe I disagree, maybe I agree. It's what's the harm in learning something new if you don't agree with it, whatever. So there was comments below this pastor's column, and then I guess during the night when I was sleeping or something, there was a comment. They said he looked like a pedophile or something. It was a horrible thing to say, and so someone emailed me and said, hey, there's a comment on there, you should look at it. And I said, oh geez, that's horrible. So I deleted it, and then I contacted that person who lived in Vancouver and said, hey, don't ever post that again or you're going to be off the website. Well, I post everywhere. What paper are you at? I post everywhere. So the guy was just trolling. So I just banned him from the site. That's another thing an editor has to do. He has to deal with the kindergarten thing, and it's tiring. It's very exhausting.
What pays for news?
Advertising. For our paper, advertising. For daily newspapers, advertising and circulation. So when the Kamloops Daily News was here, when they went out of business, they were down to about 12,000 paid subscribers. And when I moved here, they were at about 22, 23,000. So it steadily went down as the internet use increased. But our news, what pays my salary and what pays probably 50 people, 50 good jobs, is advertising. So if you see an ad on the bottom of the page, they pay for that. If you see a full page ad for a car dealership or a furniture store, they're indirectly paying for the paper to stay alive. That's what it pays for, and that's always been the way. You don't watch CNN unless there's advertisements. Don Lemon wouldn't have a job unless someone was advertising on there, and someone's not going to advertise on there unless they think people are going to watch Don Lemon, see their ad, and go buy a product. The NFL, the NBA, the NHL would never survive without advertising because they get almost all their money from the contracts for the broadcast networks, and they only give them billions of dollars because they can sell more billions of dollars to the advertisers, who are quite sure that when I watch Dallas Cowboys beat Tampa Bay this weekend, and they will, that I'm going to also go and buy a Budweiser. Advertising makes the world go round. It may not be great, but it's the way it is.
It seems like in BC, I'm going to start this over again. It seems like a lot of publishers get into politics. If we look at Kelly Hall, just recently got into it, and journalists as well get into politics.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's a lot. I mean, Kelly Hall was a publisher who brought me up here. He hired me, and then he left the paper and ran the radio station in town for a while, and then he retired. And as he told me, he was retiring when the election was happening, and he's always been a guy involved in the community. He was on the Royal Inland Hospital Foundation board. He's been on the YMCA board forever. He's always been a guy who's out there. He's involved with Rotary, all this stuff. So for him to run for city council, which is technically a part-time job, but with full-time hours, I understand, it's more like a giving back to the community service. You're getting 40 grand a year. That's not chump change, but it doesn't equate the amount of work you got to do. And most people, and you couldn't live on it as a full-time job, so most people who are counselors either have a business or are retired or have a job that allows them flexibility to do this. I don't think anyone's in it to pump up their coffers or even to get power, because I don't know if Kelly's ever going to run for mayor. I think it's what city council, especially up here when you're not part of slate politics like in Vancouver where you're part of local parties. Up here it's the purest form, I think, of civic, just giving back, of civic duty, community service. Dale Bass, longtime reporter with us, she ran for council because she retired and she had time. And she's, if you look at her resume, she's on a million boards too. It's this type of personality that's involved in the community that want to do that. And that's locally. I'm not talking provincially. That's a different animal right there.
Right, like the Cosmos that
more the Cosmos. Joe Smith from Nova Scotia. He started the Victoria Times Colonist newspaper, and then he was our second premier, and he ended up penniless, and he died on the street, as you know. So, which is the fate of many newspapers.
Yeah. I guess if councillors aren't getting paid anything, the newspaper people would be used to that.
Well, yeah. Like I say, like when I walked into my first journalism school classroom in 1990, Grant MacEwan in Edmonton, I was 22 or 21, and that's the first thing. Adrian Kennedy, the late great Adrian Kennedy said, hey, if you're here and you want to get rich, and if you want to work 9 to 5, you should leave now, because that's two things is not going to happen. And it's true, it doesn't happen. And people ask me, well, why do you work when you don't get much money, and your reporters don't get much money? I said, that tells you they're in it for the right reason, right? There's just a passion. There's like it's hard to explain, but when you get a really good story, or you write a really good column and you get some good feedback, and you hear people talking about the stories of the columns, and you know you're doing the right thing.
There should be a separation between media and government.
Church and state, exactly.
And we have somebody leave, become mayor, and then come back and creates great traction for all his columns and his website.
Yeah.
Is that good for the community discussion?
It's good to discuss, but it was the wrong thing to do. And the reason is, if you go and become a mayor, or even MLA, or even city councillor, and then you go back to becoming a journalist, you're privy to information that you can't report on. Yet as an editor, you have to tell your reporter, hey, go look into what happened at the city hall there, a story that you might have been involved in as mayor in the years past. You might have been privy to in camera, behind the scenes. You can't tell the reporter, you know what the story is, but you're telling him to go dig it up. It's a conflict that's as obvious as the nose on our faces. And if you leave journalism to go into politics, this is my belief, you should never ever go back to journalism. You shouldn't be allowed to. That's just my opinion. And another thing is, you should not be, as an editor, involved in any, you should try to avoid being involved in any kind of boards, any kind of activity. I know that some people say, well, you should be involved in the community boards. In the smaller towns, you can't avoid it. Sometimes the mayor is the pharmacist and he's the Rotarian. But in a city this size, you should try to distance yourself from everything. I don't even vote. I haven't voted since '92. I don't think reporters should vote. That it doesn't mean you can't. It just gives me one more in my mind, one more separation. That even though I might have an opinion, I'm not going to exercise it. So I just feel better about it. I wouldn't join a Rotary Club. I wouldn't join any club, because they're good clubs. They do great stuff. But if I find out something there in a meeting I can't report on, it would drive me nuts. And if something does happen to the group that I'm in, some controversy, I don't want to be involved. I want it to be hands off, so that it's a pure news gathering exercise. So it might be old school, but I don't think an editor or the head of any kind of, even a reporter, should not be involved, or should try to limit their involvement in the community with organizations while they're reporting on. Because you might be reporting on them one day and then you have a conflict. So that's why I think about that.
Is the Performing Arts Centre going to get approved?
I don't know. I think the potholes will be patched before the Performing Arts Centre rises. I have my doubts. The first one failed. The second one, the pandemic took it. I think it's cursed. But I think I'd love it to be. I think it would be a great addition. If they maybe tweaked it. Maybe I was talking to a developer before the last one, and he was saying, well, they want to build it where 4th and Seymour. And the cost is the big concern about people, not just the capital cost, but the ongoing operational cost every year. I think it was, at that time, it was a few $100,000. But why not build 6 stories of nice condos on there, and have a P3 partnership, and use the condo revenue to either pay for the capital or the ongoing operating costs, some kind of thing like that, right? You have that air tax now. There's ways to do it. It's beyond my knowledge, but rather than just build for our arts center, why not build something with revenue that'll keep feeding it and take the burden off the taxpayer? The mayor, Reedy Harriman-Jackson, it might surprise people, he's a huge proponent of the Performing Arts Center, but he wants to go bigger. He wants to build a Performing Arts Center, a convention center. He wants to look at what we need now and just build it all now, because it's only going to get more expensive as we go forward. And his idea is, why not build something where people from Kelowna will want to come here rather than vice versa? And I say, yeah, why not? You just got to get the people willing to pay for it. And every year you delay, it's going to just go up more and more and more. Kelly Hall's in favor of it. Most of council's in favor. I can't think of anyone on council who's not in favor of it. But the same was true in 15, and the voters voted it down. So, will it get approved? I wouldn't bet on it. I wouldn't wager. It's too close. It'd be like the Minnesota Giants game this weekend. I wouldn't know which way to go. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, Christopher Foulds,
Yes.
for coming. It's a pleasure to have you here,
Yes.
and your wealth of knowledge about the community and gazing into your crystal ball.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was great.
And thank you for tuning in to Conversations at the Effie. We'll see you next time.